This is a Connections California event, and we are talking tonight about working and receiving supplemental security income from SSA. And we have Daniel Fortuno from Benefits Education Center in Long Beach, who is here to talk to us. So I am going to turn this over to Daniel, who you came to hear from.
All right, let me start off with letting you know that what we're about to get into makes no common sense. I tell people all the time, benefits are like a dysfunctional family. They do not make common sense, but as in any family, if you know the rules, you don't get victimized. If you don't, you may get slapped on the side of the head to learn something that you wished somebody would have told you about. Okay, so where's an individual at today? So what we want to do is understand where the individual is at. Are they able to work? Are they applying for benefits? Or are they considering working after being on benefits? And that changes. And it's really important that people have an understanding of where am I at today, where I'm looking at this, as opposed to the old adage of how do I supplement what I'm getting? You really need to understand where you're at. So when it comes to benefits, you need to be able to know, what kind of benefits are you on and what are you receiving from public? Public could be SSI, SSDI, and health coverage could be Medicaid, which in California we call Medi-Cal, and Medicare. Now, 3 steps to successful work entry. First is you need to examine the sources of disability and health coverage. You need to know what program you're on. SSI and SSDI are in the family of Social Security, but I call them the twins because they look alike, they sound alike, but they're 2 separate programs from each other, even though they have the same definition of disability. Step 2, when you've identified what program you're on, and sometimes you could be on both, then you want to educate yourself and understand how working will be able to impact or will impact these benefits and may be able to increase your overall income. And then you create an action plan. This is where people miss out often, is they don't create a plan. So one thing that people need to be aware of is some of the definitions that Social Security has. Disability is an inability to work due to a disabling condition that will continue for at least a year or more, or may be expected to result in death. So if I'm saying I have a disability that's going to last a year or more, and all of a sudden I start making a pretty good amount of income, Social Security may say, you know what, I think we made a mistake. So just be aware that, it's an inability to work for at least a year or more. And they are going to evaluate the work activity if you do it after you've been granted. Now, working is any physical or mental activity that generates earned income. And earned income is the amount of gross income before taxes, not what you take home, but what is the gross amount. And Social Security always looks at it as a monthly amount. So, Social Security programs, there's the Supplemental Security Income, as I mentioned before, and there's Social Security Disability Insurance. Same definition of disability. They're in the same family, which is the Social Security Administration, but they have completely different rules, although there are some principles that are applicable across both programs. So when it comes to SSI, SSI is a program that has eligibility requirements if you're under age 65, that you meet the definition of disability, and then you need to meet the need requirements. And that's where it's $2,000 in the bank, 1 house, 1 car, and those are the limitations that they put on you. Now, benefits for this particular program, because the name of the program is Supplemental Security Income, the design of the program is to supplement based on need. If there are wages they're going to reduce the benefit. And if there's unearned income, the benefit's going to be reduced dollar for dollar. So anytime there's any unearned income, Aunt Susie gives me $1,000. Whoop, that's going to impact the benefit. I make $1,000. Well, if you make $1,000, we then look at the countable income calculation, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So unearned income, to be clear, is income that reduces SSI in the calendar month received. Unemployment benefits can reduce SSI in the calendar month received and can count towards a $2,000 resource maximum. Can be spent down if it's used for the individual's benefit. Whenever you're on SSI, you can never give money away. You have to show that it goes to the benefit of the individual, although they don't scrutinize every dollar and every cent that you use. What they're looking for are situations where an individual is giving away money to qualify for the program. Now, if an individual receives a retroactive benefit, let's say it takes them 3 years to get on SSI and they get $12,000, as an example, for up to 9 months, that money does not count towards the $2,000 maximum. Any COVID benefit that people have received never count towards the $2,000 maximum. And now let's get into the countable income calculation. This is how income is, wages are going to impact the SSI benefit. And the calculation is as follows. They look at gross income. They look at earned income exclusion, or they subtract it, the general income exclusion. They subtract any impairment related work expenses. And then the subtotal is divided by 2. And that becomes the amount that the SSI is reduced by. So let's give you an example. Oh, I almost forgot to mention impairment-related work expenses. An impairment-related work expense is an expense that you can relate to your work and your disability. If it's an expense that anyone without a disability would incur, then it's not going to be able to reduce the value of your gross income in the countable income calculation. A good example could be co-pays on medications or any device that you have to pay for in the month that you purchase it. Now, the countable income calculation, we're going to use an example of $1,000. So Rita here has earned $1,000 a month at a job. She's on SSI only. So what SSI does is they do the countable income calculation. So they subtract the $65 general income exclusion. That actually is a number from the 70s when that was a significant amount of money, as was the general income exclusion. To have $20 in your pocket in the 70s was actually a significant amount of money. In this example, we're going to say that she has $15 in impairment-related work expenses. We come up with the subtotal of $900 divided by 2 is $450. That becomes the countable earned income that the SSI benefit is reduced by. Now, the $20 general income exclusion is only given once. So if you're an individual that's receiving SSI and SSDI, you've already been given that $20 exclusion. Some people will get SSI in addition to Social Security disability insurance, and that's already been given. So let's give you an example. So we have the same $1,000 a month minus the 65 general income exclusion, and that's going to apply to anyone on SSI. And then in this example, we've got a $25 impairment-related work expense, and we have a subtotal of $910 divided by 2, $455, even though the individual earned $1,000 with this example, only their SSI benefit is reduced by $455. Now, if an individual hits what Social Security considers to be the break-even point, and that's when your countable income after that calculation is more than your SSI benefit, you've hit break even. And that is a month where you're not entitled to a benefit. So I'll give you an example. Let's say Maria receives SSI of $1133.73. She has earnings from a new job of $2,000 a month. We'll do the countable income calculation. 2,000 minus 65 minus 20. She's only getting SSI, so she gets that 20. We'll say she doesn't have any impairment related work expenses. Well, then the subtotal is divided by 2, and it's greater than the amount, and she loses the $1133.73. Now, even though Maria no longer receives an SSI cash benefit, she does not automatically stop receiving Medi-Cal coverage. In the state of California, Medi-Cal is automatically, and the national 1619B provision allows an individual to keep Medi-Cal or Medicaid at no cost because it's a national provision. And 1619B, an income can be as high as $56,758. And I realize everything we've been talking about is monthly, but this is a provision that is charted out or explained as an annual amount. And this is the link where you can see what the current 1619B is for that month, or that calendar year, I'm sorry. Now the SSI benefit, the countable income calculation, the reduction is actually taken 2 months after the reporting of the work activity. Unless you have a break-even point, and at break-even, you'll be ineligible to receive benefit for that month, and you will have a month of overpayment for that month. So it's very important that you report your wages as soon as you begin to earn them. Now let's talk about some additional exclusions that are allowed. There is what's called the student earned income exclusion. That is for a full-time student between the ages of 18 up to age 22. And that amount is up to $2,220 is disregarded as part of that countable income calculation. Now, that is only given up to a maximum for a calendar year of $8,950. And here we go with the part that it doesn't make any common sense. Let's see, if it's 22220 times 12, so it's not for a full 12 months that you can utilize that maximum. So it's the 2,220 is the maximum for any month, as long as you don't exceed the 8,950 for the calendar year, and that's 2023 numbers. Now, there is such a thing that's called Plan for Achieving Self-Support, and that allows you to fund a vocational goal. Pretty complex to do, but there is a tremendous value in that it allows you to set aside other income other than your SSI, an example if somebody's getting SSDI or earned income, and you're then actually able to fund your vocational goal. The application is very similar to creating a business plan. That's why it's can be complex. There are nonprofits that assist people in doing past programs. Now, if you're an individual that's self-employed, annual income will be divided by 12, and they will allow for allowable IRS deductions. So this is an example where everything else we've talked about is gross monthly income, but when you're self-employed, they're actually going to look at the year allow you IRS deductions, and then divide what's left by 12 to look at how your monthly income is going to impact your SSI benefit. And as I mentioned, with the good documentation, if an individual could use his or her monthly income if they prefer to do it that way, as opposed to doing it as an annual number divided by 12. So regardless of income, if you're working greater than 80 hours a month, then you're considered to be earning substantial gainful activity. And substantial gainful activity, sorry, I went too far. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Hold on, my computer is, there we go. It's substantial gainful activity, and substantial gainful activity is going to impact potentially the definition of disability that you're under. And substantial gainful activity is equivalent to earning $1,470 for this calendar year. Now, when an individual does work activity or not, there are going to be continuing disability reviews. There are work continuing disability reviews. And what a work continuing disability review is, where they're just simply evaluating the work activity in the dollars that you're receiving and how it impacts your benefit, and applying the countable income calculation. If you have additional impairment related work expenses, or if you want to receive the exclusion for a student, whatever you want them to consider, you have to present that when they're doing the work continuing disability review, so that they know that it's something for them to take into account. There's also medical continuing disability reviews. There is no such thing as permanent disability when it comes to Social Security. All disabilities are given a 1 to 7 year, it's called diary date. And that's the date that they're going to evaluate the individual's medical and or psychological records to see, has anything changed, and is the individual able to work. And mind you, this is something a lot of people don't realize it. If the medical record stops talking about the limitations of the individual, those limitations cease to exist. So it's very important that the medical record be a true depiction of what's going on with the individual, even after they're granted. And I recommend that no less than every 6 months, the medical record has clear information in it. So preparing for continuing disability reviews, as far as for work, you want to verify that, or make sure that they have the correct information regarding your wages. When it comes to medical continuing disability reviews, this is where reporting to your medical providers is essential. It enables them to capture, and you want to make sure that your medical provider actually documents the limitations and doesn't put a diagnosis, because the diagnosis in the world of Social Security doesn't really have a value unless it is followed by how the diagnosis manifests itself with, what are the limitations. Now, this is an important note here that I want to bring up, and it was brought to my attention to bring it up a little bit differently than I had in the past. Individuals who are on SSI, if at some point they want to access benefits under the disabled adult child, that's where you get a benefit based on mom or dad's contributions when mom or dad retires. Please be aware that if that individual's earnings, before the start of being eligible for disabled adult child benefits, they earn greater than substantial gainful activity, and that's that dollar amount of $1,470. They're not going to be able to access benefits based on mom or dad, because the individual, even though they've been on SSI, even though they've been disabled, have shown based on their ability to earn substantial gainful activity that they don't meet the qualification for SSDI under the disabled adult child benefit. Now, a way that you can get around this, okay, is to stay below substantial gainful activity and to make sure they don't say, well, you know, you're not making SGA, but you're close to it, so we're going to call it SGA. And believe it or not, they do it, is to stay below Social Security's trial work period amount, which actually is a dollar amount that's used in another program, the Social Security Disability Insurance Program, and it's a dollar amount of $1,050. So if you stay below that amount when you do work activity, you're not going to have a problem for accessing benefits if you have a parent that retires, if you can prove that you have disability between 18 prior to 22. Okay, if we have 12 months of break even is where my income is so great that I've eliminated or I no longer receive an SSI benefit. My benefit will stop, but I have up to 5 years to do what's called expedited reinstatement. And expedited reinstatement, basically what occurs is they'll go ahead and put me back on the program, and then they'll do a medical review. They'll review my records. They'll not take into account the work that I've done, but they'll verify that my medical records or my psychological records still have the level of detail that support disability. Now, let's talk about public health coverage, and we'll talk about Medi-Cal. Be aware there are many ways to qualify for Medi-Cal. There's the SSI linked, which we've already discussed under 1619B, that'll allow you to continue. There's also age-disabled federal poverty level. There's share of cost Medi-Cal, breast and cervical cancer, and the California Working Disabled Program. The reason I mention this is not that I'm going to get into the fine details. I just want you to be aware of the different types of Medi-Cal eligibility categories, is the term of art, or types of Medi-Cal. Each of these have their own specific ways that you qualify. But for our SSI recipient, they should still be able to continue under 1619B provisions. So as long as you're eligible for $1 or more of SSI, you continue to get Medi-Cal. And because of 1619B, that allows you to continue to receive that Medi-Cal. So working recipients under the 1619B, you could be a childhood disabled beneficiary under 1634C. So 1619B, eligible for SSI at least 1 month in the past year, continue to meet disability requirements, continue to meet non-disability, such as need Medi-Cal to continue working, and have income that's below the 1619B amount for that calendar year. For this year, it's $56,758. Now, just be aware, if you're earning 56, let's say you're earning $50,000, you get to keep the Medi-Cal under 1619B, but you are potentially losing the ability to access benefits based on a parent's record because you're going to be above SGA. But the good news is that you're actually putting money into the system where if you make a significant amount of money, you could be in a position to where in the future, if need be, you could be getting SSDI based on your own contribution. 1634C, as I mentioned, is when we have a disabled adult child and they lose SSI eligibility due to becoming a disabled adult child. The computer should be marked to where it reflects this, and it should be under Medi-Cal, a code or aid code of 6C is in Charlie. So I am open for questions.
Okay. Thank you. That's a lot of information. So we've got a few questions, and as Daniel is giving answers, don't feel free to put additional questions in the Q&A.
Right. So what's going to happen is that the questions are going to be read, and then I'm going to respond to them individually. And now I'm going to get a scratch piece of paper, which I thought I had out, because I'm a visual person and I take notes as I talk about issues. Okay, I'm ready.
You're ready? Okay. Here's the first one. How does SSA perceive putting resources above $2,000 into an ABLE account each month?
Okay, an ABLE account is a relatively new thing, and they're fine with it. ABLE accounts, for those of you that are not familiar with them, I think it's been 6 years they've been around now, and in the world of benefit, that's still new. And what it is an ABLE account. They have them in the different states. Not all states have them, but it allows an individual to save up for this year up to $17,000, and the account can get as high as $100,000 at this point. And the way it works is it allows the individual, you can put your wages in, you can put any money can go into that account. Now, let's say, as an example, Aunt Susie wants to give you for Christmas $1,000. If you're getting $1,000 from Aunt Susie directly, then what occurs is that's going to reduce your SSI in the month that you receive it. If you have an ABLE account and it goes into the ABLE account, it's exempt, completely exempt, as long as you haven't reached that 17,000 for the calendar year. Anyone can put money, including yourself, into ABLE, and that 17,000 actually goes up to a higher amount if you actually put wages in. And I don't have it memorized, but there's lots of information about that. Now, an ABLE account, unfortunately, is not for everybody. It's for an individual with a self-reported disability prior to age 26. So it's a terrific tool that most of my families that deal with the SSI program utilize.
Yeah, it is a fabulous tool. And I think they're thinking about raising that age limit, but nothing yet on that.
Nothing yet, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What if a young adult gets a one-time internship payment that exceeds the monthly SSI amount?
Okay, first of all, internship is a wage. So the wage, when it's received, is calculated using the countable income calculation, and that's the impact on the individual's benefit. So if it's so great that you hit break even, which is going to be over $2,000, then just in that calendar month, the individual is not eligible for the SSI benefit.
Okay, and internships wouldn't be self-employment, right?
It depends on how it's given to the individual. If it's given under a 1099, then it would be self-employment, and you could actually average it out for a calendar year to where it has less impact.
Great. Okay, if a short-term job, let's say 2 to 4 months, has a payment that's higher than SSI, will we lose the SSI benefit and have to reapply?
Okay, first of all, the income can be greater than SSI, but you always have to do the countable income calculation. So if your question is, after I do the countable income calculation, my wages, or the wages, are greater than the SSI benefit, and I have 2 to 4 months of break even, you're fine. Not until 12 months of break even that are consecutive is there an issue that you have to do expedited reinstatement, which involves a smaller level of a new application.
Okay, I'm just noticing some people are putting their questions in the chat. Make sure you look for the Q&A on your toolbar and don't put them in the chat because I'm going off the Q&A list.
Yeah, there's 30 questions in the chat and 6 in the Q&A.
Yeah, there's a few. I'll try to get back to them. Okay, is there any organization that can put support and advice, provide support and advice if there is an issue with SSI payments or calculations?
Okay, so there are nonprofits that exist that help individuals to deal with work and benefit issues, but you need to make sure that you're working with one that actually understands the rules. Because if you're working with a nonprofit who kind of has a, and they generalize things, then you're not going to be able to positively implement, how the work rules, take place. That is something that we do within my own private practice.
Great. Okay, next question. Is that net self-employment income, gross earnings minus business expenses?
That is correct. So when I'm looking at self-employment and only self-employment, and am I looking at my net after expenses, and then I divide that by 12, and that becomes then the monthly amount. Correct.
Great. Okay, here's a question about Ticket to Work. Ticket to Work puts the medical disability review on hold? Question mark. Is that correct? Does
yes. Ticket to Work, I need to start reincorporating some of the slides about Ticket to Work. When they first came about with Ticket to Work many years ago, I was actually part of, different organizations and involved in trying to pitch all the different things we wanted with the ticket program, and we wind up getting a very small amount. There are a few things within the provisions that I've described to you that already are part of the ticket. What I did not mention is that a Ticket to Work, if you involve yourself in the ticket program, and the most confusing part about it is that you think that a ticket is actually a piece of paper, but you get a ticket, you get one assigned, and it's basically where you're looking at a attempt to work through the ticket program. And while you have that plan in place, which is the actual ticket, it's the plan you have in place, it suspends any medical continuing disability reviews. Now, the work benefits are still going to impact your benefit the same exact way. The one thing that it does prevent that's being mentioned, or that was mentioned, and the person who mentioned it, that is correct, is that all medical continuing disability reviews are delayed or postponed while the ticket is being used.
Okay, next question. If someone lives in a group home, and if they work and lose SSI, how do they continue to pay for the group home?
Okay, so SSI is payer of last resort. And this is where people don't realize. They're like, well, my person gets SSI and we're going to try to get them a job and try to help them out. Well, if you make so much income that you eliminate the SSI, then that's the wages you're supposed to live on. That becomes what you live on because you're making more than your total countable income exceeds that. Now, if the group home takes Medi-Cal and that's how you're in there, you're fine. Otherwise, you take on the liability, and every group home is different. So it's not, this one standard, that I'm able to address. You'd have to look at what are the provisions of how an individual can stay in that group home.
Okay. Yeah, that's a complicated one. Can I still claim my adult child as a dependent when he is on SSI?
Yeah, I'm not a tax expert, okay? So I can't address that, but I am aware that many families do claim their children as dependent, but you have to be careful because when you're claiming somebody as a dependent, you're alleging that you're paying their expenses. And the SSI program, if you're covering food or shelter, will reduce the benefit dollar for dollar, not to exceed that 1133.73, not to exceed $304. So, it's a catch-22. What's the real benefit? Are you in a better position of having Johnny actually be responsible, not be a dependent, set up an ABLE program to pay the rent to you for him living in your home? You just have to figure out what's the best way to do it.
Okay, I'm not sure about this question. My child is eligible for Department of Rehabilitation Services. Does that mean she is likely eligible for SSI, or are there different eligibility requirements?
No, Department of Rehab, you do not have to necessarily be disabled. The SSI, being in rehab, has no connection to whether you're eligible or not for SSI. SSI is the one that has the standard, or Social Security for that matter, that you have to be able to show that you're unable to work for at least a year or more, and you're not able to earn substantial gainful activity. So Department of Rehab eligibility has no automatic connection to anything to do with Social Security.
Thank you. Okay, this is a 3, maybe 4-parter. Break even.
Oh, let me get my paper.
Let me read it all, and then I will come back and I'll read them separately. So the way it's written: 1, break-even month currently, no longer receiving SSI for about a year and under the 1619. Then how long can they be covered for Medi-Cal?
Okay, say the 2 again.
How long can they be covered for Medi-Cal?
Okay, I can answer that real quickly.
Go ahead.
Indefinitely. There is no, they can keep, there is no period of time under 1619B that you can continue with Medi-Cal.
Okay, so part 3, are they earning work credits for future Medicare for when they retire?
They're earning work credits for SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, which then also provides Medicare health coverage. So yes, they are.
Okay. And does this person still report the monthly income to SSI? I'm not sure what you. Okay.
You still report the income so that they keep the 1619B door open. I call it a door.
Okay, great. Okay, next. In my experience, a person can be indefinitely on 1619B, i.e., longer than 12 consecutive months over break-even point and remain technically SSI eligible. Currently on 21 months consecutive 1619B. EXR, I know you told us what the expedited reinstatement. Okay. EXR triggers only after SSI eligibility is lost, which does not happen when on 1619B.
Okay, so let's clarify something. When you're 1619B, because your income is so great that you've eliminated the SSI cash benefit, that continues. Expedited reinstatement would take place when your wages drop below break even, or if you stop work entirely, you have expedited reinstatement. And that's going to be after 5 years, up to 5 years after that first 12 months of working.
Okay. Okay. What kind of record keeping is required by Social Security to prove the SSI is being used for rent and food?
They want to see your checking account. They ask to see multiple months of checking. They're going to want to see a rental agreement, or if you're in a household, let's say I have some household where there's no mortgage, then what happens is, as an example, let's say the expenses to live in that home are $3,000 a month. There's 3 adults, then the individual's responsible for basically $1,000 in that example. So it depends on the living situation of the individual, has to show on their bank statements, whether it's through the payee account, that's when somebody else is responsible, or you're the individual's checking or saving how they pay their expenses. You have to be, all you have to do is show in your record keeping, as far as in your bookkeeping when it comes to your accounts. That's how you do it.
Okay, thank you. Do we report income, wage, and gifts every month, and how is that done?
Oh, yeah. Supplemental Security Income is a supplementing program. Therefore, you're required by law, if you have wages or somebody gives you money, a gift, to report it, because your supplement is going to be reduced by it. So any gift is dollar for dollar with no maximum. It reduces the SSI benefit, and then the wages are going to be through the countable income calculation, and you are required to report it every single month. Now, be aware that sometimes, people will report using the online portal, but I've not seen that work 100%. And also, I've seen people develop a relationship with the local Social Security office, and they start making regular pay, and the Social Security worker will literally say, "Oh, don't worry, we got it." You still report it, and you keep copies of everything. I recommend that people do binders, good old-fashioned 3-ring binder, and you keep a record of every month copies of what you've provided, so that if they ever go through the system, then you're able to say, "Oh, wait, no, here's what I did." No, and you don't rely on, "Oh, I gave them a copy, I don't need to." No. With Social Security, it's a very large system with lots of people working, and 80% of the people really are good at what they do. I did not say 100. So if you're unfortunate to deal with that 20 percentile, you may get somebody who will actually give you incorrect information. And it happens. And this is why, when you're getting this benefit, a binder is going to be your best friend. I tell people to keep a binder that has all of your, benefit notices in it by calendar year. Do not do a file folder, because you'll go nuts with it going here, there, and everywhere. So you do a nice little binder for your actual benefits, and then a binder for when you do work activity. And I see little hands going up with thumbs up. So it looks like I got some people out there that have had positive experiences by managing it that way. That's proactive.
Yeah, no, a binder is a great idea. Okay, let's, I'm laughing at something in the chat. My son is currently a 17-year-old junior in a high school, not receiving any government benefits. Where is the best place to start to prepare my son's receipt of SSI once he completes high school and works toward gainful employment? You provided a lot of very useful information, so I'm wondering where to start my research. Thank you.
Okay, you're discussing a couple of different issues here. First of all, the most important thing, regardless of what you choose to do, is that you have good medical documentation from medical providers. Most parents, as an example, let's say you have an individual, who has a child with autism, and they do all this elaborate neuropsych evals, and they do all this amazing testing that quantifies the limitation of the individual, and it's all done at age 13. Okay, that's great for 13, but the minute that person turns 18, those records are greater than a year, therefore are not considered other than history. So there's nothing current. And that's one of the biggest reasons why individuals that have genuine disabilities who may have stabilized and who are not continuing to get regular treatment get denied. So the first thing is have a medical record or a psych record that tells your child's truth, that captures the limitation of your child. Now, if your child's able to do work activity, great, that's fine. Stephen Hawkins, did we want to stop him, as disabled as he was, from being able to do what he did? Well, he found a way to be accommodating, to accommodate his disability. Well, not everybody has that. Oftentimes we'll have individuals that'll be able to earn money, but then they have all of these special accommodations going on, but the accommodations aren't captured. If you have somebody doing work activity, if they have a job coach, if they have special support, you capture those so that the value of the work is reduced so that it may possibly be considered below SGA if you're right at that borderline, of where, the income may be considered substantial gainful activity. So what I would say is set some goals, see what you can accomplish, but have a medical record that is telling his truth, that captures his limitation in detail.
You said substantial gainful activity was $1,470 a year?
No, a month.
A month. Okay.
Yeah, $1,470 gross income per month.
Perfect. Okay. We use an ABLE account. So if gifts from relatives go there, do we still need to report it to SSI?
Nope. It's captured when you do the reporting of the ABLE, and it is all exempt.
Yep. Perfect. It's the benefit of the ABLE accounts. If a person's disability is autism, does the individual still need to see a doctor every 6 months to have medical records to prove to Social Security the person is still disabled?
Yes. That's the biggest problem I have. When I work with my clients who come to me and they're like, well, I had all these evaluations and Susie's not going to be any different. Well, the fact that you don't have current records means that what Susie was dealing with no longer exists. If it's not in the medical record, her story is now empty chapters, and you don't want to have it. So, oh God, yes, please, every 6 months, capture whatever those limitations are.
Yeah. I had been doing the SSI application for a while for my loved one, and the last few months, it hasn't been working. I called SSI and they told me since his income has not changed, not receiving SSI and under 1619, I don't have to report it unless the income has stopped or changed drastically. What should I do?
I do things in a way where I'm being proactive. I would report the income monthly. So it sounded like the question was going in one direction and then it went entirely to another direction. It sounded like it was a conversation or questions about how to qualify and dealing with qualifications.
Yeah.
And then it went into 1619, which means that the individual is on SSI and they are at break even. They're not getting a cash benefit. I would still report it. I choose to be proactive so that nobody can say, well, you didn't report it, and now we're going to start, well, it just makes it simpler.
Okay, so this is kind of in that same vein. If they no longer receive SSI and because of break even, do they still need to report their previous month income to SSI?
I would say yes. I just play it safe.
Yeah. Okay. Does the SSI receiver have to pay any taxes on SSI? If living in a parent's home and paying rent and expenses through SSI and ABLE, do parents have to pay taxes on the rent? So it's two-part.
Are you asking me tax questions? And I'm a disability expert. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I can
check
tell
with
you
your tax guy.
SSI beneficiaries, SSI is non-taxable. That I can tell you. But anything about mom or dad or the tax liability, you need to have a good tax person to answer those questions.
Perfect. Okay, can you talk about representative jobs?
What? I've never heard the term representative jobs.
Plural, representatives jobs. Whoever's question that is, if you want to put a little more in the Q&A, we'll ask it again.
I've never heard that term.
Okay.
And God knows I've heard thousands of terms.
Does Daniel's office help people know how to apply or prepare to apply for SSI? And yes, they do.
Yeah, that is, I am in private practice, and my give back to the community is these trainings that I do for parents, helping parents and other organizations. But yeah, I am in private practice. I offer a free 20-minute counsel, and that's where an individual or families talk to me and decide if they want to fly on their own. And some do. I literally have had people with parents helping parents that have attended so many of my trainings. They just did what I talked about and they were successful. And others who say, I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to hire Daniel and have him deal with the bulk of the heavy lifting. So it's up to you. Yes, I do.
Thank you. Yeah, you're always very kind about that. Does Ticket to Work help in any other way?
I don't have the pros of Ticket to Work memorized. So I would look it up online in the Social Security website. And another good place to find information, and I highly recommend them, is DB101. And that's disabilitybenefits101.org. And they have a section for California. And they actually, I helped create that site. I was part of the original team. I'm no longer involved. But they do an amazing job of explaining the programs. And they even have calculators so that you can do planning and calculating just to have a sense of what's going on. But they do a good job in describing the ticket. You can always go to the Social Security website, but in my experience, they are not always the clearest in explaining their program. They like to introduce non-technical terms to try to simplify in their minds what people might think of it, and it just creates more confusion, where DB101 does a really good job in explaining things. So that's a good place to find out more about Ticket. And there are things, and I am going to be editing my future slide for SSDI and work. And I am going to, as recommended by somebody who emailed me, who's possibly on the call, and I thank you, going to include that in the next presentation I do on SSDI and work.
Yes, Daniel will be back next week to talk about SSDI. We decided to do these in smaller chunks so that it's easier to talk about the specific programs. So that both will be recorded and put in our e-learning library so you can see them there if you are not able to come to the presentation. One more question, and then I think we're going to wrap up. Besides the app, so I'm assuming there's an SSA app you can report earnings on? It says, how else can you report? Phone, online, etc.
I'm not aware that it's an app. I know that it's through their website. They have a way that you can report wages. But I have seen it not be the most consistent way to get things taken care of. So I believe in the old-fashioned get it to Social Security. I believe in make a friend at Social Security and start providing it to them if you can.
So a couple of people are putting in the Q&A that there is an app, so check it out.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Could be new. Okay, with that, I think we're going to wrap up and thank Daniel very much for all the information he provides for us and for coming back to talk about SSDI. I see clapping hands. I want to say thank you, Daniel. Your information it's a lot, right? Like I can't wait to get this in our e-learning library so I can watch it again, because some of it would take some time to really let sink in and understand how to work these programs to the benefit of our kids. So thank you.
You're most welcome. It's my pleasure. It's what the trainings are what I love doing more than anything. So
Yeah, well, you're excellent at it.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you all again.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Take care.